In a city where rain collects on steel and silence speaks louder than threats, there lives a man who built an empire on control. The Mafia boss, known only by reputation and fear, has commanded loyalty for 30 years through whispered orders and the weight of consequence. But power has no cure for the one thing that terrifies him: watching his mother fade away in a hospital bed, refusing food, refusing life itself. For 7 days she hasn't eaten. The doctors say her body is shutting down, but they're wrong. Her will is shutting down. Grief over a life spent watching her son become a ghost in human form. She recognizes the killer in his hands, the lie in his smile, and now, near the end, she's decided she doesn't want to witness what comes next. A waitress at a small diner near the hospital has watched this man sit in the corner booth every evening, ordered coffee he doesn't drink, and stared at nothing. She notices the tremor in his fingers, the way his jaw clenches when his phone vibrates with the sounds of his other life. She's seen enough suffering in this city to recognize it even when it wears a tailored suit and a reputation built on ruthlessness. What she doesn't know is that her small gesture, a moment of unexpected kindness, will dismantle years of armor. What the Mafia boss doesn't understand is that redemption sometimes arrives quietly through the hands of a stranger, in the form of a meal prepared with compassion. This is the story of how a man learned to be human again, how a waitress became the conscience a city had given up on him ever having, and how sometimes the most powerful act in the world isn't dominance. It's simply showing up with food and asking, "Are you okay?" Chapter 1. The Vigil. The hospital room smells like bleach and the quiet surrender of bodies giving up. His mother lies propped against pillows that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Money he's made from deals that would horrify her if she had the strength left to be horrified. The pillow itself is Egyptian cotton, imported from boutique suppliers. The blanket is silk. Everything in this room is expensive, and none of it matters. Her name was Anna, still is Anna, though she's become a collection of bones arranged beneath white cotton sheets. 63 years old, though the woman in this bed looks 90. Her hair, once dark and thick, has thinned to wisps of silver. Her hands, which used to move with the purpose of someone creating life through food, now rest motionless at her sides like abandoned tools. She used to make risotto on Sundays, standing at the stove for 2 hours, stirring with the patience of someone who understood that some things cannot be rushed. Her kitchen filled with the smell of toasted rice, chicken stock, the slow bloom of saffron. She used to sing while she cooked, old Sicilian songs her mother taught her, melodies that carried the weight of generations. She used to believe her youngest son would become something good, a doctor maybe, or a teacher. Anything but this. He sits in the vinyl chair beside her bed, the one he sat in every night for a week, and he watches her chest rise and fall with the mechanical precision of a woman who's already decided she's leaving. The rhythm is labored. Sometimes there are long pauses that stretch too long, and he leans forward, checking to see if she's still breathing, if she's chosen this moment to go. The doctors came this morning with concerned eyes and careful words. Malnutrition, dehydration, a body in the final stages of surrender. They don't understand that the body is following instructions the mind gave long before the hospital admission. They want to insert feeding tubes. They want to monitor her more closely. They want to fight a battle that has already been decided somewhere deeper than medicine can reach. He'd brought her soup yesterday, homemade, expensive, prepared by a private chef in his penthouse kitchen. The chef has worked for him for 12 years and doesn't ask questions about where the money comes from or what his employer does when he leaves the penthouse. The soup was perfect. Handmade broth, fresh vegetables, the kind of thing that should have comforted her. She took one spoonful and turned her face to the wall. "Mama," he says now, and his voice, the voice that commands men, that whispers orders that result in bodies being found in rivers, cracks like old plaster. You have to eat. You have to try. She doesn't open her eyes. Her breathing continues its labored rhythm. He reaches for her hand, and she doesn't pull away. That's worse somehow. When she used to flinch at his touch, at least there was defiance, at least there was reaction. Now, there's only absence. Her hand is cold, skeletal. He can feel the individual bones beneath tissue-thin skin. His phone vibrates against the nightstand. He ignores it. It vibrates again, and again. 3 messages in succession, which means something's wrong. In his world, silence is agreement, and multiple messages mean someone's decided that his absence is an opportunity. He pulls the phone from his pocket without looking at it. The screen shows names he knows, problems he's used to solving, a situation in the warehouse district, something about product that didn't arrive on schedule, a rival crew testing boundaries. He deletes the messages without reading them fully. For the first time in 30 years, the business is secondary. The realization terrifies him more than any cop, any rival, any threat to his empire. Control has been his religion, and now he's discovering that control is an illusion, a story people tell themselves to avoid the truth, that some things can never be controlled. Death, love. The unbearable knowledge that you've become someone your own mother can no longer bear to live for. "I'm going to get you to eat," he says, and it sounds like a threat, like an order, like everything he's ever said. He doesn't know how to speak anymore except through force. Words have become tools in his hands, weapons designed to compel compliance. Even now, even here, even to his dying mother, his language comes out as command. Her breathing doesn't change. The window shows the city beyond, buildings stacked like a gambled-away future, lights beginning to come on as evening approaches. Somewhere out there, his machinery is operating without him. Somewhere out there, someone is deciding that his absence is a weakness to exploit. And somewhere inside him, something that used to be his ambition is turning to rust. He sits there until the fluorescent lights blur, until visiting hours end, until a nurse gently tells him he should go home. The nurse is kind, professional. She doesn't recognize him, or if she does, she's too practiced in compassion to show it. She places a hand on his shoulder and says, "She needs rest. You need rest too." He doesn't go home. Home is a penthouse that echoes. Home is places where his mother's memory lives, in the furniture she helped him choose, in the kitchen she used to cook in when she still believed there was good left in him. He can't go there, so he goes to the diner instead. Chapter 2. The Routine. The city moves around him like water around a stone. Rain falls in sheets that somehow make the lights brighter, more desperate. He drives through streets he's walked for 30 years, and tonight they feel foreign, like a language he used to speak fluently but has forgotten. He'd built his life on being indispensable, irreplaceable, necessary to the function of this entire underworld. The empire required him. Every decision funneled through him. Every problem found its solution in his intelligence, his network, his willingness to do what others wouldn't. Now he's learning that the machinery keeps turning, even when its architect abandons the workshop. His lieutenant, a man named Rico, who's been with him for 15 years, handled the warehouse situation. Called him 3 times. When Marco didn't answer, Rico made the decision himself. The shipment arrived on schedule. The territory remains secure. A problem surfaces in the North District, a young crew getting ambitious, testing boundaries, and it's resolved with the kind of quiet efficiency that requires no input from him. A message was sent. Understanding was achieved. No bodies, which is Rico's way of showing respect while also demonstrating capability. He's trained them well. They need him less than he thought. Perhaps worse, they don't need him at all anymore. He's become obsolete to his own organization, and the only thing keeping him tethered to control is the fear of what happens if he lets go completely. Every day follows the same architecture. Morning meeting with his lawyers, who handle the legitimate businesses that provide cover for everything else. Real estate holdings, import-export companies, restaurants and clubs and entertainment venues that launder money while simultaneously turning a profit. The lawyers wear expensive suits and speak in careful language designed to create deniability. They don't ask him what happened in his other life. They just make sure the money flows clean and the paper trails lead nowhere. Then the hospital by noon. He takes the private elevator. The doctors know his face now. They know he's the man who pays extra for the best room, the best equipment, the best care that money can buy. They don't know what he is, or maybe they do, and they're too professional to care. He sits with his mother while she sleeps, while she refuses the soup, while she refuses the soft-boiled eggs. While she refuses the gelato he had flown in from the old neighborhood in Sicily. The gelato was made by a woman named Carla, who used to know his mother. Carla's family owned a gelateria near where Anna grew up. He'd paid significant money to have it flown in on ice. Anna took one spoonful and turned away. By evening, exhausted and desperation drive him to the diner. He's been coming here for a week now, following some logic he doesn't fully understand. Maybe it's the anonymity. Maybe it's that this place is so small, so ordinary, that his darkness seems impossible within its red vinyl walls. It's a small place, the kind of establishment that's been operating in the same location for 40 years because no one important enough to destroy it has bothered to notice it. Red vinyl booths that have been reupholstered 3 times, a counter with stools that spin with a certain stiffness that suggests they've been sat in by thousands of people, each leaving their invisible weight. A window looking out onto the street where rain falls most evenings now, as if the city itself is weeping. The lighting is warm, imperfect. There are watermarks on the ceiling where the roof leaked last winter. The coffee maker hisses. The smell is unforgettable. Coffee and bacon and the deep, comforting aroma of things cooked with routine rather than ambition. He sits in the same booth every night, corner position, back to the wall. It's automatic, this tactical awareness, this need to see threats before they materialize. Old habits, old survival mechanisms that have kept him alive, but have also kept him isolated, separate, unable to exist anywhere without calculating exits and angles. The same waitress is always there. Dark hair pinned back with a practicality that suggests she doesn't spend much time thinking about appearance. Maybe 40, maybe older. It's hard to tell with women who've had lives, who've accumulated experience like other people accumulate weight. The kind of face that's been worn smooth by small kindnesses and significant disappointments. She wears the uniform, black pants, white shirt, small apron, like she's made peace with what it represents. Honest labor, honest money, honest exhaustion at the end of a 12-hour shift. Tonight, she brings him coffee without asking. She knows his routine now. She knows he comes here and sits and doesn't speak to anyone. She knows he orders one coffee and doesn't drink it. "You look like you haven't slept in days," she says. And it's not a compliment or an insult. It's an observation, a moment of seeing someone rather than looking through them. He doesn't answer. He never does. His silence has become a wall. People have learned not to breach it. She leaves the coffee and walks away, but not before her eyes, dark, observant, heavy with their own sorrows, meet his for just a moment, just long enough to let him know that someone has noticed he's drowning. Chapter 3. The Diner. 3 nights of ordered coffee he doesn't drink, and on the 4th night, the waitress sits down across from him. It's between the dinner rush and the late-night crowd, that quiet pocket of time when diners become almost peaceful. The place empties out. The fluorescent lights feel less harsh. The sound of the city beyond the windows becomes almost musical rather than threatening. She slides into the booth with the confidence of someone who's spent decades reading people and deciding which ones deserve conversation. There's no hesitation in her movements, no uncertainty. "You're going to make a hole in that coffee if you stare at it much longer," she says. Her name tag says Sophie. He looks at her, really looks at her. She doesn't flinch. She doesn't recognize him. Or if she does, there's no fear in her eyes. She doesn't fear him. She just sees a man who's falling apart. It's been so long since anyone looked at him as a man, rather than a force or a threat or a function, that the experience is almost disorienting. "My mother," he says, and the words surprise him. He hasn't spoken them out loud to anyone outside his immediate circle. He hasn't acknowledged the weight of this particular suffering to a stranger. "She won't eat." Sophie nods. Like this is the most natural thing in the world to confess to a stranger in a diner at 9 o'clock on a Thursday night. Like men in expensive suits regularly come to her workplace and reveal their deepest fears while she pours coffee. "How long?" she asks. "A week." Has anyone asked her why? It's such a simple question that it breaks something inside him. Of course he hasn't asked. That would require conversation, connection, the willingness to listen rather than command. He's ordered. He's demanded. He's threatened the universe to make his mother well, as if force was a tool that worked on fate the same way it works on men. He's used money and connections and reputation, all the things that have always gotten him what he wanted. Except his mother's will to live can't be purchased or coerced or commanded back into her body. "No," he admits. Sophie nods like she understands more than he said. Her hands rest on the table, practical hands, stained with small marks from kitchen work, fingernails cut short for efficiency. These are hands that have prepared thousands of meals for people she'll never really know. Hands that have served and served and served. She's probably scared, Sophie says. People stop eating when they're scared, when they think it won't matter anyway, when they lose their reason to fight. He doesn't respond. He can't. The silence between them stretches out like something alive. She stands to leave. She needs to know someone still believes she's worth feeding, Sophie says. That's what people need, not the food, the belief, the permission to keep going. The proof that someone out there thinks she deserves to survive this. She walks back to the counter, and he sits alone with this revelation, watching rain trace patterns down the diner window like the city is crying for him. The coffee has gone cold. He's never going to drink it, but he'll sit with it anyway, as a reminder that sometimes the most important thing isn't consumption, it's presence. End of chapter 3. Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far these stories of redemption and courage can travel. Chapter 4. The Offering. The next morning he arrives at his mother's hospital room with a different kind of determination. The doctor said she won't eat because her body is giving up. The waitress said something else entirely, that surrender is a choice, and choices can be unmade if someone believes they're worth the effort. He sits beside her bed and takes her thin hand in his thick one. The contrast is stark, his hand marked with the small scars of a life lived outside the law, her hand marked with the wrinkles of a life spent cooking, cleaning, working. Her wedding ring is still there, though his father died 11 years ago. She never took it off. "Mama, I need you to tell me why you won't eat," he says carefully, using a voice he rarely uses anymore. Not a command, a request, an actual question seeking an actual answer. Her eyes flutter open. Recognition flickers. She sees the boy she used to have, buried somewhere beneath the man he became. For a moment, they're in the same room together, past and present, the child he was and the adult he's become. "Because I know what you are," she whispers. Her voice is like paper tearing, "and I don't want to stay in a world that made you that." The words hit him like a physical thing. All his success, all his power, all the empire he's built means nothing because his own mother can't look at what he's become without wanting to leave. "I know what I am too," he says quietly. "I'm your son." That hasn't changed. You're not my son anymore, she says. You're someone else. She turns her face to the wall, and he sits there in the silence of that accusation. And he understands that love isn't something you can demand or command. Love is something that exists or doesn't, and sometimes the people we've hurt most are exactly the people who have the right to stop loving us. That evening, he returns to the diner earlier than usual. It's not as busy, just the late lunch crowd lingering over coffee and pie. Sophie is moving fast, carrying plates and refilling coffee cups, managing 3 tables simultaneously with a grace that speaks of years of practice. When she has a moment, she approaches his booth with knowing eyes. She's been expecting him. She knew he would come back. "How is she?" Sophie asks. "She won't talk to me about it. She just turns away. She says I'm not her son anymore." Sophie's expression doesn't change, but something in her eyes softens. Then maybe she needs to talk to someone else, someone she doesn't have history with, someone without all the weight. He understands immediately. "No. You have a better idea?" He doesn't. He never does anymore. Everything he built himself on, control, force, the ability to bend the world to his will, is useless against a dying woman's grief. It's useless against the simple fact that he's become someone his own mother can't bear to witness. "My name is Marco," he says, and saying his real name feels like removing a mask he's worn so long he forgot what his face looked like underneath. His reputation is built on other names, other titles. But this is his real name, the name his mother gave him, the name he was born with before he chose this life. "I know," Sophie says. "I've known for a while. I watch the news too. I just know how to see past it. I've gotten good at seeing past the things that scare people. I'm Sophie." She brings him a plate, not coffee this time. Pasta, simple and perfect. Handmade by someone who understood that food is language, that what we cook for people is what we're trying to tell them about care, about being seen, about mattering. "This is for your mother," Sophie says. "Tomorrow, tell her a stranger made it and wanted her to know someone out there believes she deserves to live." He takes the plate. It's still warm. The smell rises from it like a prayer. "Why are you doing this?" he asks. Sophie looks at him for a long moment. "Because I understand what it's like to be invisible, and I understand what it takes to make someone visible again." Chapter 5. The breaking point. His mother's room at 3 a.m. The city silent outside the windows. The machines humming their faithful rhythm. The breathing machine, the heart monitor. The IV line dripping nutrients her body is too weak to request. He stands at the edge of her bed, the container of Sophie's pasta in his hands, and he feels something crumble inside him like old concrete beneath a demolition hammer. He's held a gun. He's ordered men to their deaths. He's been responsible for suffering that would crush most people with guilt. But nothing has broken him the way watching his mother refuse to live has broken him. "Someone made this for you," he says. His voice is barely audible. "Someone I don't even know. A woman named Sophie. She made it because she thinks your life matters. She thinks you're worth saving." His mother's eyes remain closed, but her breathing changes slightly. She's listening. "I know I'm a terrible son," he continues, and the words come from somewhere deeper than his voice box, somewhere ancient and raw, somewhere true. "I know I became everything you warned me against. I know I chose this life, and it's cost you everything. The worry, the shame, the knowledge of what I've done, it's all been because of me. But Mama, please, don't let it cost you your life." He sits on the edge of the bed, the mattress dipping under his weight. "Why should I live?" she asks. Her voice is barely a whisper. "So I can watch you die, so I can see where your choices lead, so I can know that I failed as a mother." He sits there for a long moment. Then he places his hand on her chest, just above her heart. Because I need you to, he says. Not to forgive me, not to make sense of it, not to be proud of me, just to live long enough to know that somewhere in all of this darkness, you still exist. You're proof that I wasn't always this. You're proof that there was good in me once, before everything changed. I don't believe that, she says. I don't believe it either, he says, but maybe we can both try. And for the first time in 30 years, he cries, the man who commanded respect through fear, who built an empire through ruthlessness, who's made decisions that haunted people for the rest of their lives, he weeps like a child in a hospital room at 3 a.m, not silently, not with dignity, with the raw, gasping sobs of someone whose entire foundation has cracked. Her hand moves. It reaches for him. It touches his face with the tenderness of a mother touching her wounded child. He opens the container. The smell of garlic and olive oil and simple human care fills the room. It cuts through the sterile hospital smell. It cuts through the weight of years of separation. He prepares a small forkful and brings it to her lips. She opens her mouth. She eats. It's the smallest act, one bite of pasta, but it feels like resurrection, like something dead returning to life, like a choice being made, a choice to survive, a choice to believe that somewhere inside her son, there's still someone worth living for. She eats another bite, then another, and Marco sits beside her bed as the sun begins to rise over the city, and his mother, his actual mother, not the person who turned away, but the woman who decided to try, continues to eat the food that a stranger prepared with kindness. Chapter 6. The turning. For 3 days, Sophie brings him food to take to his mother. She doesn't ask for payment. She doesn't ask questions about who he is or what he's done. She simply shows up at the end of her shift with containers of simple, perfect food. Pasta e fagioli, chicken broth, fish prepared so delicately it falls apart on the tongue like a secret being told. His mother eats. Not much at first, a few bites, then a spoonful of broth. But the refusal has broken. The choice to live has been made somewhere, in the quiet agreement between two women who've never met but understand the language of compassion in ways that transcend words. On the 4th day, Sophie sits with him during the slow afternoon hours. The diner is nearly empty. Just an old man in a back booth reading yesterday's newspaper and a young couple trying to make eye contact while the world moves around them. "You know what she reminds me of?" Sophie says. She stirs her coffee, even though she hasn't added sugar or cream. "Your mother. There's this guy, comes in here sometimes, sits in the back booth, never says a word, just stares at his coffee like it holds the answers to everything. Then one day, I see him crying at the table, silently, like he learned a long time ago that making noise about pain just brings more pain." Marco realizes she's talking about him. "I started bringing him food he didn't ask for," Sophie continues, "because I figured if someone's breaking that quietly, they probably forgot how to ask for help. He looked at me one day, this dangerous-looking man in an expensive suit, probably someone I should be afraid of, and his eyes were so empty I thought maybe he'd never smile again. But then I brought him something I made myself, something with intention, something I'd put care into, and something changed. Not everything, but something." She reaches across the table and places her hand near his, not quite touching, close enough to feel the warmth. "You're still that man," she says, "but you're also becoming someone else. Your mother sees it. That's why she's eating." Marco understands that she's been speaking about him in the third person, giving him a way to hear the truth without defending himself, without needing to be the powerful one, the one in control of the narrative. "Why?" he asks. "Why help someone like me?" "Because everyone stops being a person at some point in their life," Sophie says, and she's quiet now, like she's speaking from her own experience. "They become the thing people fear, or the thing people pity, or the thing people expect them to be, but underneath, they're still just people, broken people, people who made choices they can't unmake. You're still a person, Marco, even now, maybe especially now. That night, his mother eats an entire bowl of minestra. The doctors say it's remarkable. The decline has stopped. There's appetite returning. There's strength returning to her voice. The heart monitor shows a stronger rhythm. He doesn't tell them it's not the food that healed her. It's the belief that someone, a stranger, a woman named Sophie, thought her life was worth saving. It's the proof that kindness still exists in a world that's shown her so much cruelty. It's the knowledge that her son, whatever he's become, is still capable of reaching for connection. End of chapter 6. If this story already has your heart, hit the like button. It helps the story of Anna reach more people who still believe in compassion. Chapter 7. The Ascension. His mother's recovery isn't linear. Some days she's sharp, asking him questions about his life, his business, the things he's avoided discussing with her for years. She wants to know how it started, how the boy who used to help her in the kitchen became the man reading about himself in newspaper headlines. She asks because she needs to understand, and he answers because she deserves the truth. Other days she's quiet, conserving energy like someone who still isn't entirely convinced she wants to stay. The strength that returned comes and goes like the tide. The doctors adjust medications. They monitor carefully. They say she's stable, which is their way of saying they don't know what will happen next. But she's eating, she's living, she's fighting. Meanwhile, Marco's world begins to fragment in ways he never anticipated. His lieutenant Rico approaches him about restructuring operations. The business is evolving, he says. The younger generation wants more autonomy. They want to move into new territory, new markets. They want to expand in ways that require him to either commit fully or step aside. His lawyer mentions that the younger crews are pushing for more independence, talking about going their own way if he doesn't give them room. There are whispers about whether he still has the hunger for this life. In the underworld, perception is everything, and the perception is growing that Marco is distracted. The machinery of his empire keeps turning, but he's no longer at its center, and to his surprise, the world doesn't collapse. Cities don't burn. Blood doesn't run in the streets. Business continues because business always continues, with or without any individual person. "You could walk away," Sophie says one evening, sitting across from him in the diner. She brings this up carefully, like she's been waiting weeks to say it, like she's been choosing the exact right moment to plant this seed. "From what?" he asks, though he knows exactly what she means. "From all of it. Whatever you built, whoever you became. You could choose something different, a different life, a different version of yourself." "No, people like me don't get to choose," Marco says. The words come out as absolute truth, the way all lies do when they've been repeated often enough. "The moment you're in, you're in. There's no stepping out, there's only stepping off a bridge or being stepped on." "I think you're wrong," Sophie says, and she leans forward now and her eyes are fierce. "I think you're still choosing. Every single day, you came back to that hospital room instead of running your business. You chose to sit with your mother. You chose to cry. You chose to listen to a waitress instead of dismissing her. Those weren't obligations. They were choices, real ones, free ones. If you can choose those things, then you can choose other things too. If I walk away, people I've made enemies with will come for my family, my mother, people I care about." "Your mother," Sophie says carefully. "She's already accepted that you might not survive this world. What she hasn't accepted is that you don't want to survive any other way." It's such a precise observation of his paralysis that he can't respond. She's right. He knows she's right. But being right doesn't change the fundamental trap. That stepping away requires disappearing completely, requires leaving everything behind, requires becoming a ghost to stay alive. That weekend, he sits with his mother during the afternoon light. The sun comes through the window and makes everything look golden, like maybe the world is beautiful instead of broken. She's stronger now. Color has returned to her face. The bones of her cheeks are less sharp. She's asking about his childhood, his first love, the moment he decided to step into the darkness. "Do you remember the Rossi boy?" she asks. "The one who lived 2 streets over. You were going to start a business together, something legitimate." He remembers Carmine Rossi. They were going to open a restaurant. It was going to be legit, clean, built on actual skill rather than fear. Then Carmine's father got in trouble with some loan sharks, and Marco's father offered to solve the problem. In exchange, Marco got introduced to a different world, a world where problems were solved faster, where money flowed easier, where power was immediate. "I made the choice," Marco says. "Nobody forced me." "I know," his mother says. "And I think that's what broke my heart, that you made the choice and then couldn't admit that it was a choice, that you had to pretend it was inevitable, that you had to convince yourself there was no other way." "There was no other way," he says, but even as he says it, he realizes it's not true anymore. There were always other ways. He just chose the path that made him feel powerful, and then he lived inside that choice so completely that he forgot it was a choice at all. His mother takes his hand. "I forgive you," she says, "not for what you've done. I'll never forgive that. But I forgive you for being human, for making choices you thought were necessary, for becoming lost." He cries again, but this time it's different. This time it's not desperation, it's something quieter, something like grace. Chapter 8. The Wound Revealed. It happens quietly, the way these realizations always do. His mother is recovering well enough to be discharged, and on the day before she leaves the hospital, Sophie comes to the room without being asked. She just appears, having somehow known that this is the day it matters. She sits on the edge of the bed with a familiarity that suggests she's done this before, sat on hospital beds, held the hands of people she's never met, but understood anyway. "I know why you stopped eating," Sophie says to his mother, and Marco realizes she's been planning this conversation with the precision of someone conducting surgery. "You were punishing yourself because you felt responsible for what he became. You blamed yourself for his choices." Anna's eyes fill with tears. "My son," Sophie continues, and her voice has changed. It's higher now, thinner, like she's speaking from a wound. "He had a mother too. She died when he was 7, car accident. A truck ran a red light and everything changed in one moment. He used to come to my diner and sit where your son sits, and he'd stare at nothing with the same look Marco has. I found out years later, much later after we'd known each other for a long time, that he never forgave himself for surviving. He thought his mother would be ashamed of him for growing up to be ordinary, not special, not worthy of the life she lost." Sophie pauses, and when she continues, her voice is steady. But she wouldn't have wanted that for him. She would have wanted him to live, to be ordinary, to find peace, to forgive himself for surviving when she couldn't. Sophie reaches over and touches Anna's face, just a brushing of fingers against her cheek. "You're not responsible for the choices he made. And he's not responsible for the fact that you almost chose to leave. You both get to make your own decisions. You both get to live in them." Marco understands what's happening. Sophie is giving his mother permission to forgive him by showing her that guilt, when left unexamined, is a slower death than any disease. "You're not responsible for the choices I made," Marco says to his mother. And he means it with a clarity he's never felt before. "I need you to know that. I chose this, all of it. I chose the darkness because it felt safer than the light. I chose fear because it felt stronger than vulnerability. But those were my choices, not yours, not your failure." His mother reaches for his hand, and her grip is stronger now. "And I need you to know," his mother says, "that I am still proud of you for loving me enough to try." Sophie excuses herself quietly, leaving them in the amber light of late afternoon. Through the window, the city continues its motion. Cars moving, people walking, the world turning. But inside this room, there's only the two of them, mother and son, and the fragile possibility of restoration. Marco realizes that the waitress has become something more than a stranger. She's become the bridge between the man he was and the man he could still become. She's become the proof that even in a broken world, connection is possible. That kindness is revolutionary, that showing up for someone else is its own form of salvation. Chapter 9. The Epilogue. 3 months later. On a cold morning when the city is wrapped in fog and quiet, Marco stands in a cemetery. His mother's grave is 6 months old now. She survived the hospital. She came home. She lived another 6 months in the apartment she'd shared with his father, in the rooms where she'd sung while cooking, in the place where she'd raised a boy who was supposed to become something good. Then a second stroke took her peacefully in her sleep, and Marco held her hand through the whole thing. He stayed with her as her breathing slowed. He was there when the light left her eyes. He was there to say goodbye, finally, to the woman who'd given him life and spent decades watching him choose darkness instead. Her grave is simple, no monument to his money, just a stone with her name and the dates of her living, Anna Moretti. Beloved Mother, 1955-2024. He places flowers, simple roses, the kind Anna used to arrange in the kitchen window. The kind she used to show him when he was young, pointing out the particular way light made them luminous. Sophie comes to stand beside him. She does this sometimes now, on days when the weather is clear and the city feels bearable. She's become his friend, nothing more, nothing less. Something that feels more revolutionary than any relationship he's ever had because it's built on actual seeing, rather than need or function or power. "You're thinking," Sophie says. "I'm thinking about the moment she started eating again," Marco replies. "How one meal, one act of compassion, changed everything. How a stranger cared enough to step in when her own son was drowning." "That wasn't the meal," Sophie says. She stands quietly, not needing to fill the space. "The meal was just proof. Proof that someone could see her, not her guilt, not her grief, not her failure as a mother, just her, just Anna, just a woman who deserved to live." They stand in silence as the fog moves through the cemetery like a slow breath. "I've been thinking about leaving the city," Marco says. "Going somewhere else, starting different, becoming something other than what I've built." "You could," Sophie says, "but I don't think you will." "Why not?" "Because you're not running from your past anymore. You're standing in it. You're visiting the grave of the woman who gave you life and watching flowers in the rain. And sometimes that's what redemption looks like. Not escape, but acceptance. Not forgetting, but honoring what came before. Not erasing your history, but refusing to let it define your future. The fog thickens, the city disappears. For a moment, there's only the two of them. The stone with his mother's name, the flowers beginning to surrender to the weight of the rain, and the quiet understanding that some transformations happen not through heroic acts, but through the patient accumulation of small kindnesses, small choices, small moments of seeing another person as they truly are. The rain begins to fall. It falls on the grave. It falls on the city beyond the fog. It falls on Marco and Sophie as they walk slowly back toward the gate, and neither of them moves to hurry. There's no need to rush away from grief. There's only the need to walk through it, to honor it, to let it change you into something kinder. Some sorrows, when properly honored, become the foundation for grace. Some losses, when accepted fully, become the source of compassion. And some men, when broken completely, finally discover what it means to be whole.